At a quiet diner on the edge of Brookhaven, Aaliyah, a black waitress, strives to make ends meet. Her dream of owning a bakery feels distant, buried under mounting bills. But one evening, a mysterious woman in a sharp suit leaves a crumpled dollar bill with a cryptic message. Skeptical but holding on to a glimmer of hope, Aaliyah dials the number. Unbeknownst to her, this call is the gateway to a life beyond her wildest dreams. The neon sign of Willow Street Diner flickered, casting a faint red glow on the cracked pavement. The humid air outside carried the mingled scents of city life, hot asphalt, gasoline, and the faint aroma of fried food from a nearby cart. Inside it was warmer, heavier, filled with the aroma of cheap coffee, grease, and the lingering scent of cigarette smoke clinging to the regulars' clothes. The diner was quiet now, the usual late-night crowd thinned to a few weary souls nursing their last coffees before vanishing into the night. Aaliyah Brooks systematically wiped down the counter, her body aching from the grueling double shift. Her feet throbbed in her worn sneakers, and her lower back screamed from hours of standing. But exhaustion was a familiar companion. Just another day, another long night at Willow Street Diner, where the fluorescent lights hummed like an unending headache and the old jukebox in the corner sat silently, gathering dust. She glanced at the kitchen clock. 12:43 a.m. Almost done. Just a little longer. The bell above the door jingled, shattering the stillness of the nearly empty diner. Aaliyah barely looked up, probably another truck driver seeking a late-night bite, or a regular coming in for their usual. But the moment her eyes lifted, she felt a shift in the atmosphere. The woman who entered was unlike anyone who typically graced these doors, tall, composed, and effortlessly elegant. She carried herself with an air of quiet authority, a presence that didn't demand attention but commanded it nonetheless. A perfectly tailored black suit hugged her slender frame, the fabric catching the dim light as if too luxurious for such a place. A diamond bracelet glinted on her wrist as she adjusted the sleek leather handbag on her shoulder. Her hair, a cascade of silver-streaked curls, was pulled back into a low bun, accentuating her sharp cheekbones and the unwavering focus in her deep-set eyes. Aaliyah had encountered wealth before. It wasn't uncommon in a city like Brookhaven, where towering skyscrapers loomed over neighborhoods like hers, delineating the rich from those who served them. But there was something distinct about this woman. She wasn't merely rich, she was powerful. For a moment, Aaliyah hesitated, gripping the damp cloth in her hands before forcing herself into motion. She tucked the rag into her apron pocket, grabbed her notepad and approached. "Good evening, ma'am. What can I get started for you?" The woman barely acknowledged her. She slowly, deliberately opened the menu, her expression unreadable as she scanned it. When she finally spoke, her voice was smooth, measured. "Grilled cheese and water." That was it. No extras, no substitutions. Just a simple, almost childlike meal from a woman who appeared to dine in five-star restaurants with plates too small to justify the price. Aaliyah jotted it down. "Coming right up." As she moved toward the kitchen, she stole another glance at the woman. She sat perfectly still in the corner booth, back straight, hands resting lightly on the table. Not scrolling through a phone, not tapping impatiently, just waiting as if she had no pressing engagements. It was unsettling. Aaliyah didn't dwell on it, she had work to do. The grilled cheese took less than 5 minutes to prepare. Buttered bread crisped to a golden brown, cheese melted perfectly, the kind of simple comfort food that suited a place like Willow Street Diner. She plated it carefully, added a glass of water and carried it to the woman's table. "Enjoy," she said, setting it down. The woman offered no acknowledgement, no thank you. She simply picked up the sandwich and took a small, deliberate bite. Aaliyah exhaled slowly through her nose, forcing herself not to roll her eyes as she walked away. She had dealt with people like this before. Wealthy, entitled, the kind who barely registered the servers who brought them their food. They inhabited a different world, one where people like her existed only in the background. The minutes passed in near silence. The woman ate slowly, finishing the sandwich in precise, calculated bites. She dabbed her mouth with a napkin, folded it neatly, and slid out of the booth with the same effortless grace with which she had entered. Aaliyah had already turned back to the counter, half distracted by the thought of finally going home, when she heard the soft rustle of cash being placed on the table. She waited until the door jingled shut before moving to clear the plate. Her fingers moved automatically, scooping up the napkin, the empty water glass, that she froze. A single crumpled dollar bill lay in the center of the table. Her stomach twisted. A dollar tip? Aaliyah felt the heat rising up the back of her neck, frustration bubbling beneath her exhaustion. $1 from a woman wearing a watch that likely cost more than Aaliyah's monthly rent. But as she picked up the bill, her irritation flickered into something else. Scrawled across the surface in neat, slanted handwriting were the words, "The biggest opportunities sometimes start small. Call this number." Aaliyah stared at it, her pulse quickening. She turned toward the window, catching just a glimpse of the sleek black car as it vanished down the street, its taillights glowing red in the distance, fading into the darkness. Her fingers tightened around the bill. What kind of person leaves a note like this? And more importantly, should she call? Aaliyah sat at the counter long after the last customer had left. The diner now eerily quiet save for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of the flickering overhead light. The dollar bill rested on the worn countertop in front of her, its creased edges slightly curled. She ran her thumb over the inked words again, her mind caught between suspicion and curiosity. This had to be a joke. Rich people didn't just leave cryptic notes for struggling waitresses in run-down diners. Maybe it was some kind of setup, one of those scam calls that lured desperate people with false promises. But something about the woman, the way she carried herself, how deliberate she had been in her every move, told Aaliyah that this wasn't random. She glanced at the clock. 1:27 a.m. Too late or perhaps too early to make a call like this. But the thought of going home to another overdue bill, another night of worrying about whether she'd be able to afford her mother's medication next month, made her grip the phone a little tighter. Before she could second-guess herself, she dialed the number. It rang once, twice. A click. A breath of silence. Then a voice. Smooth, steady, unmistakable. "Aaliyah," the woman said as if she had been expecting the call. "I was beginning to wonder if you would." Aaliyah's mouth went dry. Who is this?" A soft chuckle on the other end. "My name is Naomi Sinclair. I take it you found my message." Aaliyah swallowed. "Yeah, I found it. What is this, some kind of game?" "No," Naomi said simply. "It's an opportunity. But only if you're willing to take it." Aaliyah hesitated. "Why me?" Pause. Then, "Because I saw something in you." Aaliyah let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, and what exactly did you see?" "A broke waitress who works herself to the bone for scraps." Naomi's voice didn't waver. "I saw someone who never gives up no matter how hard things get. Someone who treats every customer with kindness, even when they don't deserve it. Someone who's been overlooked, underestimated. Someone who reminds me of myself a long time ago." Aaliyah's breath hitched slightly at that last part, but she pushed it down. This was ridiculous. People like Naomi Sinclair didn't just help people like her. There had to be a catch. "Look, I don't know what you think you saw, but I don't have time for cryptic riddles," Aaliyah said, rubbing her temple. "Either tell me what this is about or don't waste my time." Naomi exhaled softly as if pleased by the challenge. "Meet me tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll send you the address." Aaliyah frowned. "And if I don't?" "Then you don't," Naomi said simply. "But if you're calling me at 1:30 in the morning, something tells me you don't have a lot to lose." Aaliyah clenched her jaw, her fingers tightening around the phone. She hated that the woman was right. A pause stretched between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Then Naomi spoke again, her voice softer this time. "You deserve more than just surviving, Aaliyah." The line went dead. Aaliyah stared at the phone in her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. Tomorrow morning. He should ignore it. She should go home, sleep, and pretend this never happened. But she knew she wouldn't. Because for the first time in a long, long time, someone had looked at her and seen something more. Morning came too soon. Aaliyah barely slept, her mind churning with every possibility, every worst-case scenario. By the time her alarm blared at 7 a.m., she was already awake, staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment. The peeling paint, the water stains creeping along the corners, the soft whisper of her mother's breathing from the next room. It was all a stark reminder of why she was even considering meeting Naomi Sinclair in the first place. She pulled herself out of bed, dressed in the nicest outfit she owned that wasn't a waitress uniform. A fitted navy blouse, black slacks that were slightly too long, a pair of flats that had seen better days. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked unfamiliar. The tired eyes, the set of her jaw like someone bracing for a fight. Perhaps she was. By 8:45 she was on the train, gripping the metal pole as the city blurred past. The address Naomi had texted led to a part of Brookhaven Aaliyah had only ever seen from a distance, where the buildings weren't just tall. They were glass and steel monuments to a kind of wealth she had never come close to. When she stepped out of the station, the world felt different. The streets were spotless, the air smelled like fresh coffee instead of gasoline, and the people walked with the kind of ease that came from never having to worry about making rent. She had never felt so out of place. The building Naomi had directed her to was impossibly sleek, the kind that reflected the entire skyline in its tinted windows. The moment Aaliyah stepped inside, the temperature seemed to drop, cool, sterile air conditioning replacing the heat of the streets. A woman at the front desk, blonde, stiff-backed, with a practiced corporate smile, barely spared her a glance before her eyes flickered over Aaliyah's outfit. It was subtle, the slight lift of an eyebrow, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Aaliyah knew that look, she had seen it before. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, voice clipped, polite in a way that implied, "You don't belong here." Aaliyah lifted her chin. "I have a meeting with Naomi Sinclair." The woman's smile faltered just for a second. "And you are?" "Aaliyah Brooks." Something shifted. The receptionist's eyes darted to the computer screen, fingers tapping quickly across the keys. Whatever she saw made her pause. Then, with noticeably less enthusiasm, she gestured toward the elevators. "Top floor. Miss Sinclair is expecting you." Aaliyah didn't thank her. She simply turned on her heel and stepped into the elevator, feeling the weight of the receptionist's stare on her back the entire time. As the door slid shut, she took a deep breath, her pulse loud in her ears. Top floor. The ride up was smooth, too smooth as if the elevator wasn't even moving. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a space that didn't resemble an office at all. It was too open, too bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows stretching across the entire length of the room, offering a panoramic view of the city below. Sleek, modern furniture sat in deliberate arrangements, the kind of expensive minimalism that screamed money. And there, standing by the window, was Naomi Sinclair. She turned at the sound of the elevator, the same composed expression on her face as the night before. But here in this setting she fit. She belonged in this space in a way that Aaliyah never had anywhere. "Aaliyah," Naomi said, motioning for her to come forward. "I'm glad you came." Aaliyah stepped forward cautiously, glancing around as she approached. Didn't have much of a choice. Naomi's lips twitched as if she had expected that response. "Would you like something to drink?" Aaliyah shook her head. "I'd like answers." Naomi nodded approvingly as if she appreciated Aaliyah's directness. "All right then, let's get straight to the point." She moved toward a sleek black desk, picked up a folder and placed it on the glass surface. "I told you last night that I see potential in you, and I meant it." She gestured toward the folder. "I want to invest in you, Aaliyah. But I need to know, if money weren't an obstacle, what would you do?" Aaliyah's throat tightened. That question. That damn question. The one she had forced herself to stop thinking about years ago because it had only ever led to disappointment. But now, standing here in front of Naomi Sinclair with the city stretched out beneath them, it felt real. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. She didn't want to say it. Saying it made it real, and real things could be taken away. But Naomi was waiting. "I'd open a bakery," Aaliyah finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something small. A place that feels like home." For the first time, Naomi smiled. Not the small, controlled smirk from the night before, but something real. "Then that's what we'll do." Aaliyah blinked. What?" "You heard me," Naomi said, sitting down. "But this won't be a handout. If you want this, you're going to have to work for it. Every decision, every sacrifice, it's yours to make. I'll provide the funding, the guidance, the connections. But you build it." Aaliyah stared at her. "Why?" Naomi leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable. "Because someone once gave me a chance when no one else would. And I've spent a long time waiting to pay that forward to the right person." Aaliyah's heart pounded. This was insane. This wasn't real. And yet, her mind flashed to her mother's prescriptions, to the exhaustion in her bones after every shift, to the tiny, persistent dream she had shoved into the darkest corner of herself, too afraid to touch it. She swallowed hard. "What's the catch?" Naomi tilted her head. "The catch is that it won't be easy. There will be setbacks, risks. And if you give up, the deal is off." Aaliyah clenched her jaw. She had spent her whole life surviving things that weren't easy. She had already lost so much. Could she really afford to turn this down? The answer was terrifyingly simple. "I'm in," she said. Naomi nodded once. "Then let's get to work." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Naomi wasted no time and neither did Aaliyah. There were no drawn-out meetings, no sugar-coated pep talks, just immediate action. Naomi had given her a list, not a business plan or a neatly laid-out blueprint, but a list of things she had to figure out herself. Find a location, research suppliers, outline a budget, develop a brand. "You build it," Naomi had said, and she meant it. Aaliyah threw herself into it with an intensity she hadn't known she was capable of. Mornings were spent scouring the city, looking at potential storefronts, comparing rent prices, trying to picture what her place could be. Afternoons were filled with research, calls to distributors, meetings with local farmers, endless notes scribbled into a worn-out notebook. At night, she experimented with recipes in her tiny kitchen, flour dusting every available surface, the scent of vanilla and cinnamon filling the air as she tested and retested every idea she had ever dreamed of. But it wasn't a smooth journey. The first space she found, a small but charming storefront in a neighborhood she loved, was snatched up before she could even make an offer. The second landlord she spoke to took one look at her and dismissed her before she even got a word in, his tone dripping with condescension as he said, "This area might not be the best fit for you." She had heard it before. The polite rejection, the unspoken, "You don't belong here." It burned. She told Naomi about it the next day, expecting some kind of outrage, maybe even an offer to step in and handle it. But Naomi only watched her with that same unreadable expression before saying, "Then find another way." So she did. She kept looking, kept pushing, and finally, after what felt like an eternity of dead ends, she found it. A small brick storefront on the corner of a quiet street, big windows letting in streams of golden light, a space that felt warm. The rent was higher than she had hoped, but manageable. The lease agreement was brutal, filled with clauses she barely understood. Naomi handed her a folder the next morning. "Your first real lesson in business," she said, flipping through the pages. "Contracts can kill you faster than failure. Read everything." It took 3 days, countless Google searches, and a very long phone call with a lawyer Naomi introduced her to, but Aaliyah signed the lease. She had a location. That should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like stepping off a cliff because now it was real and real things could fall apart. The weeks blurred together. Construction crews gutted the space, the walls stripped bare, the floors torn up. Aaliyah fought tooth and nail for every detail, from the tile in the kitchen to the color of the chairs. She learned quickly that nothing ever went as planned. The plumbing needed more work than expected, delaying everything by weeks. A shipment of baking equipment arrived damaged, forcing her to scramble for replacements. The stress was suffocating, the pressure unlike anything she had ever known. One night, after yet another unexpected cost nearly derailed everything, Aaliyah sat on the floor of the empty bakery, her back against the wall, staring at the half-finished space around her. The numbers weren't adding up. No matter how she twisted and stretched the budget, she was running out of money fast. Her phone buzzed, a text from Naomi. "Success doesn't come without struggle. Keep going. You're closer than you think." Aaliyah let out a slow breath, her fingers tightening around the phone. She wasn't going to quit. She couldn't. So she adjusted. She cut what she could, pushed deadlines, negotiated harder. She poured everything into this. And then, after months of exhaustion, of sacrifice, of moments where she had nearly convinced herself she wasn't good enough, wasn't ready, the bakery was finished. Her bakery. Home Hearth Bakery. The name gleamed in elegant lettering above the door, the final piece of a dream she had barely let herself believe in. The night before the grand opening, she stood in the center of the space, looking at what she had built. The shelves were stocked, the counters gleamed, the scent of fresh bread and warm spices filled the air. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The morning of the grand opening, Aaliyah stood behind the counter of Home Hearth Bakery, her hands gripping the edge as she forced herself to breathe. The sign outside gleamed under the soft morning light, the lettering bold, real, hers. She had spent the last few hours ensuring everything was perfect. The glass display case was lined with rows of golden croissants, perfectly glazed danishes and soft, sugar-dusted beignets. The scent of cinnamon, vanilla, and fresh bread curled through the air, warm and inviting. The The cafe tables, small and intimate, sat beneath hanging Edison bulbs that cast a golden glow over the space. Every detail was intentional, every corner a reflection of the dream she had built from nothing. And yet doubt sat heavy in her chest. What if no one came? What if all of this, the months of sacrifice, the late nights, the risks, ended in nothing but empty chairs and wasted food? The bell above the door jingled. Aaliyah snapped her head up, her heart lurching as the first customer stepped in. A woman and her young son, bundled in their coats, eyes scanning the bakery with curiosity. Then another person came in, then two more. And just like that, the place filled. By noon, the bakery was buzzing. Families gathered at tables, office workers stopped in for coffee and a pastry. Children pressed their noses against the glass case, eyes wide with delight. Aaliyah barely had time to process it, her hands moving on instinct, pouring coffee, plating pastries, smiling at every new face that stepped through the door. And then, just as the lunch rush began to settle, the door swung open again. Naomi Sinclair walked in. She wasn't alone. A woman stood beside her, around Naomi's age, her posture poised yet softer, her expression warm. Two children trailed behind them, their excitement evident as they took in the space. Naomi, in her usual impeccable suit, surveyed the bakery with a slow, deliberate gaze before turning her eyes to Aaliyah. "You actually showed up," Aaliyah said, breathless from the chaos of the morning. Naomi's lips curved slightly. "I wouldn't miss it." The woman at her side stepped forward. "My name is Camille," she said, her voice gentle. "Naomi told me about you. About what you've built here." Aaliyah frowned slightly, glancing at Naomi, who simply tilted her head as if waiting for her to put the pieces together. Camille smiled, a quiet, knowing expression. "Years ago when I had nothing, Naomi did for me what she's done for you. She gave me a chance, a second shot at building something of my own." She gestured around the bakery. "And now you're doing the same." Aaliyah's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. Naomi, watching her closely, reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. Without a word, she placed it on the counter. Aaliyah stared at it, her pulse hammering. "What is this?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Naomi simply nodded toward it. "Open it." With careful hands, Aaliyah peeled back the flap, pulling out the crisp white paper inside. Her eyes scanned the words once, then twice, her breath catching in her throat. The bakery. The loans. The investment Naomi had put into it. Paid in full. Her hands shook. I don't understand." Naomi leaned in slightly, her voice softer than before. "You built this, Aaliyah. You earned this. I just gave you a push. Now it's truly yours." Aaliyah felt the weight of it all crash into her at once. The exhaustion, the fear, the relentless, unyielding struggle. And now, for the first time in her life, freedom. Her vision blurred, her fingers clutching the paper so tightly it crinkled at the edges. The bakery around her faded, the voices of customers becoming distant noise. It was too much. It was everything. She exhaled, a choked laugh slipping past her lips, and when she looked back at Naomi, her eyes shone with something unspoken. "Thank you," she whispered. Naomi simply nodded. "Just promise me one thing." Aaliyah swallowed hard. "What?" Naomi glanced around the bakery, where customers sat with warm pastries, where laughter filled the air, where something real, something lasting had been created. "One day," she said, "find someone else to give a chance to." Aaliyah nodded because she already knew she would. Months passed and Home Hearth Bakery became more than just a business. It became a part of the community. Mornings were filled with the sound of clinking coffee cups, quiet conversations between old friends, and the occasional burst of laughter from a mother trying to corral her sugar-hyped toddler. The scent of fresh bread and warm spices lingered in the air, wrapping around every person who walked through the door like a familiar embrace. Aaliyah had never known a place could feel alive like this. Naomi still stopped by from time to time, always sharp, always watching. She never asked for credit, never sought recognition. She would sit in the corner with her coffee, flipping through emails on her phone, occasionally lifting her gaze to study Aaliyah, like she was measuring her progress, not as a businesswoman but as something more, someone becoming. But true to her word, Naomi stayed in the background. This was Aaliyah's now. And Aaliyah had kept her promise too. One chilly afternoon, just as she was about to lock up, the bell above the door jingled. She looked up, expecting a late customer, But instead she saw a girl in her early 20s, wrapped in a too-thin jacket, her dark curls tucked under a knitted beanie. Her expression was hesitant, tired in a way Aaliyah recognized too well. "Sorry," the girl mumbled, shifting on her feet. "I know you're closing, but I saw the sign. Help wanted." Aaliyah studied her. There it was, that look, the same one she had worn the night Naomi had left that dollar bill on her table. She glanced at the now hiring sign taped to the window, the ink slightly smudged from the cold. It wasn't just a job listing. It was a door cracked open just enough for someone to walk through. Aaliyah set down the rag she had been holding, stepping closer. "Have you ever worked in a bakery before?" The girl shook her head, clearly bracing for rejection. "No, but I can learn. I just need a chance." Aaliyah exhaled slowly, her mind flashing back to Naomi's words. "One day find someone else to give a chance to." She looked back at the girl, then at the framed dollar bill hanging on the wall behind the counter, the words written across it still clear. "The biggest opportunities sometimes start small." Aaliyah smiled. "Come in," she said. "Let's talk. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy."